And we are live. Good evening, everybody. You've got Jeremy with Roundtable Racing here, and our guest tonight is Dan Mel. Ah, I messed it up already.
Malvasio. Malvasio.
Malvasio.
Just call me
Malvasio.
Danmo. That's it. Everybody just
Dan.
calls me Danmo.
Excellent. All right, Damo. Whereabouts are you in the world? What
So I'm
part
on
of
the
America are you?
east side of Pennsylvania. I live in the boonies, so the nearest city that you might have heard of is Allentown. There's actually a song called Allentown, I believe. Classic rock. I think it's Bon Jovi, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so it's a we're coal miner country. There used to be a big steel industry where I live, and yeah, nothing but trees and mountains.
Yeah, right on. So, um, let's tell us a little about yourself. So where did you get started? I mean, obviously you're a car guy now. Have you always been a car guy?
Believe it or not, no. So yes, right now I am a professional drifter. But I now let me preface this. My first car was a manual car, so I did
Yeah.
start the right way. But I wasn't into cars. My dad wasn't into cars. Nobody in my family was. I kind of just organically, saw the guy at the local gas station with, this might show my age here, but he had the Eagle Eye STI, which was like the hot car at the time, and hearing the turbo and the blow off valve, and it was like, oh, I looked at my buddies, what was that noise, and then got on the internet and kind of researched what a turbo was, and that kind of clicked it into gear there. Having said that, though, I have been on two wheels since I was three. So my dad did race endurance motocross um, his whole life and got me into riding when I was younger. And I raced up until I was like 17 and, kind of tapered off of motocross, even though I was pretty darn fast. But tapered off and then, got in, got graduated high school and started working. And then it was more of a, oh, shoot, well, I can't get hurt, riding motocross. And then I even did wind up, blowing my shoulder out. And then from there, it was kind of just like, learning about little cars. And then, so I'm a self-taught welder and, I worked in the trade for 13 years, and then I actually started my own business. Now I might be moving a little quick here, but I started my own business building turbo manifolds, intake manifolds, doing roll cages, and ran that business for about 3 years and was really, working. I mean, if anybody that has a personal business knows, I was working 20 hours a day, not getting any sleep. I would even sleep
Yep.
in my shop and it was really kind of like grinding me down.
Yeah.
And as luck would have it, at the time, I had an RX-8 rotary engine car, and
Nice.
a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, there's a local track having a drift event." He's like, "It's 35 bucks. Why don't you weld the rear end and let's go check it out." And I've welded plenty of rear ends for customers, that were into drifting. And we went to this drift event and I sat in the pits for about 2 hours because I was so nervous to just to like, get the balls to even get in line to go out on the track. And shout outs, that was my local track now, Drift Evergreen. It's in Drums, Pennsylvania. But once I finally got the nerves to get in line, a random person just comes up and opens my door, my passenger door, and hops in. And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on?" He goes, "Hey, do you mind if I come for a ride with you?" And I said, "Well, this is my first time drifting." And he goes, "Hey, this is my first time going for a ride along. Let's figure it out together." And that kind of just like, I was just like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever." And literally went right out, spun out, all day long.
Oh
But
yeah.
it was like the funnest thing ever. And I remember I came back from that event and it was around November. So, where I live, we get snow and we have seasons. So, November's cutting it close to, when the snow starts. And they had one last, they called it an encore event. Oh, if so many people sign up, we'll have another event this year. And enough people signed up, and I went to that one. And after that second event, some things started clicking. I was actually able to, like, hold a drift for more than 2 seconds. And I literally remember after that event, I was like, I'm closing my business down. I want to drift. This is it. And when I had my business, I was still working full time too yet. So,
Yep.
it was literally, I finished out all the work that I had, booked in my shop, and literally closed the doors to chase drifting. And it's literally been a blast. And that was 5 years ago. Was the first drift event I went to.
Wow.
And yeah, I tell you what though, I'm the type of guy, when I get into something, I'm like 110%. So it's funny, like, a lot of people will think like, oh, you got pretty good at drifting really, quick. And the thing is, so I did those two events. And then my first, like, after winter, you had the start of a new season.
Yeah.
And that first full year, I did 52 days of drifting. So, like, 52
Wow.
track days. I went all in. It was every weekend. If there was 2-day events, I was there. 3-day events, I was there. Literally, it was just me and my one buddy traveling around the east coast of the United States in a, 1994 Chevy Suburban. And dude, I had an old ratty trailer that we literally welded a tire machine to the, like, tongue of the trailer, so we could always, like, change tires. And it was a blast. It was like one of my funnest years of drifting.
Oh, that
um
that sounds like a hell of an adventure for sure. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's kind of how I got into it. I mean,
Yeah.
uh
And then obviously you welded up your own cage, and did you
yeah,
build your
so
own angle kits and everything else too, or did you
yeah,
did
so
you end up picking
no,
up
that's
something
that's
else?
that's actually a really good question. So yeah, the first car I had, I first track day, I had a welded diff, a bucket seat, and I think I had a hydraulic e-brake, but
Yeah.
I don't think I actually plumbed the lines at that point, so it wasn't working. But funny enough, the car had a full cage in it, because at the time, that's like what I was doing for a living,
Yeah.
was building roll cages. And now my views are different, but I would say at the time, I would say immature. And I'm not saying that roll cages aren't the move, but for the speeds I was drifting at as a beginner, I didn't need a roll cage.
Didn't need it. Yeah.
But I showed up with a full roll cage. Actually, we did like a full paint job on this RX-8. I wish I could, like, share a picture. I should have, came prepared. But I did like camo, red, gray, and white. Full paint too. Not even like vinyl wrap. Like, we fully painted this car for
Wow.
some stupid reason. Um, but then, yeah. So then my second year, and this was, after learning all this stuff, with all my welding experience and learning about cars. And I'm the type of guy where, like, I haven't had cable in 15 years. So when I'm not doing something, I'm like researching, whatever, like, looking into geometries of suspension and how everything works. And so that off season between my first year and my second year, I just started simple, and I shortened the knuckles on the RX-8,
Yeah.
the pickup point on the knuckle, which allowed more, steering angle. RX-8s and RX-7s have terrible stock steering angle, so they're kind of dicey to drift in stock form. But add in that little bit, I think I shortened the knuckle like 3/4 of an inch, or it'd be like 19 millimeters,
Yeah.
for you guys not using freedom units. But
You'd be surprised. There's a lot of freedom units still used up here. Yeah.
all right, all right. But so just that little bit opened up maybe like 10, 12 degrees more angle. And that second year, it made the car so much more driftable until the downfall of the RX-8. It's an amazing chassis, but the Renesis rotary engine is garbage. It's
So it was going to be my next question, how that stood up in there.
so it lasted that I think like up until the second last event in that second year. Okay, so I put miles on that engine, beating the crap out of it, but eventually it did crack the one the iron. They're called, they're rotary engines are basically like a sandwich. They're stacked
Yeah.
together, and the one iron where the thermostat housing was, it wound up cracking and just spraying coolant everywhere. And
Wow.
I did the day that it blew up totally. Like I kind of knew it was going to happen, and I wound up doing like we have this one little figure 8 kind of track at our local thing, and I wound up doing like a 2-minute drift, just holding it to the floor purposely, send it to the grave.
Yeah.
And then from there, I bought a BMW. That was my first drift BMW. Prior to that, I was into BMWs. I had a couple E30s. Just when I was getting into the car scene. I mean, back then you could pick up. I'm 34 years old, so I'm a little bit older than some of the younger generation drifters. But
Yeah.
back in my day, you could buy an E30 for like 600, US dollars. Now E30s are like 10 grand. Um,
Stupid, right? Man.
yeah. So yeah, I bought a E36, and basically same. It was like the same thing. I had it. I bought it like 3 days before I was going to Lake Erie, Pennsylvania for a drift event, which is like 7 hours away from my hometown. And literally, like in those 3 days, put a full cage in the car. I cut the knuckles, and then I learned a little bit more, and I also extended the control arms,
Yeah.
which gives you more clearance. All homebrew, call it ghetto, setup if you want,
Hey.
but yeah, that, and like I think I had like $200 or $300. They're called Max speeding rod coilovers.
Yeah.
They were, man, they're good for the price. Like if that's what you can afford, get them. They're great. I drove years on them. But yeah, literally got that car, caged it, did the angle kit, and this is a funny story. We wound up being like on the deadline of when we had to leave to go to this event because it was like a 7-hour drive. We were leaving the night before, and we were like, oh well, we'll refill the coolant when we get there. And I never drove the
Oh.
car either. Like I picked it up sight unseen. So we
Oh
drive
no.
7 hours and get to the track, and it's like, setup time and that, a couple hours till driving starts. And we finally put coolant in it, and it's just pissing. And I mean like out of the head, like just a solid stream coming out, of the engine. And I'm like, oh my God, I bought a roach. Like this thing had a blown head gasket. Like I did all that work on this car and drove 7 hours, and like I'm not gonna be able to drive. Um and shout out to this company called Blue Devil. I don't know if you guys have that up
I've
your
heard of
way.
it. Yeah.
So that stuff works. I've used it in multiple drift cars. But anyway, this one guy at the track who was a local there, he goes, "Hey, I'm not saying it will work. It's $80 for this bottle of this stuff," but he goes, "It's the only stuff I've ever seen seal a blown head gasket." So we go out, we buy this stuff, we come back, and it's like it's this whole process. You got to drain all the coolant out, fill it with water, dump this stuff in, start the car, and let it idle for like it's like 50 minutes, like almost an hour. And I'm literally like the car's idling. I'm looking under, and it's this solid stream of water, and then all of a sudden it's like drip, 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 drip. Like 10 minutes later, it's like drip, 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 and eventually it stopped dripping. And I'm like, oh no way! Like hell yeah, I'm gonna go drive now. So like we go out onto the track and the car was terrible. Like the clutch was shot. Like the coilovers were so like loose and the thing was like rolling all over the place. But I can't forget this. I pulled off the track and this guy comes up to me and goes, I was watching you guys all day long. And I'm like, look at these idiots pouring this shit in the car. It's never going to work. And he goes, halfway through your first lap, that thing stopped smoking. He's like, I'm a believer. And it's funny. I drove that car for 2 years. Never did the head gasket. Every year I would like redo the Blue Devil thing.
Yeah.
And I sold to a buddy of mine who wound up wadding it up in a wall, but to my knowledge, like the car went to the junkyard still running
With that in it.
with the blown head
Wow.
gasket.
That's amazing shit.
Yeah, yeah,
Buy
yeah.
some and put it in our toolbox.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't recommend doing it if you like built a nice engine because it is nasty stuff. But
Yeah.
if you're in a pinch, I'll swear by it. I mean, I've used it multiple times and it works. Now, there's two different bottles. There's a white label and a yellow label. You got to get the yellow label bottle.
That's the
It's
ticket.
that's the ticket, yeah.
Blue Devil. Put that on
But
your list, guys. Blue Devil. That's awesome.
yeah, Blue Devil.
Yeah.
So then let's see
So
what
why you said E36? Why that one? What drew you to
I
that?
think at the time it was just cheap. I mean, 90% or okay, my local drift track is not what you might think of as a standard drift track. It's a bunch of rednecks. We're all broke and we're all running, almost what normal people would consider junkyard cars. And but guess what? We were out there having a good time.
That's half our
And
guys up here.
I
You-
remember the first event I went to, the amount of BMWs I saw with over 200,000 miles on them pinging off rev limiter all day long. I'm like, there's got to be something good here. And yeah, I think it was just a cheap one came up, and I had blown the RX-8 up, so I was looking for something else. And I remember looking at the numbers and like, the E36, it was a 2.8 liter, the one I got. It was
yeah.
supposed to have like 200 and something foot-pounds of torque versus the RX-8, which has 110 foot-pounds of torque. I mean, those things are
They're revers, they're not torquers, right?
right, right, right.
Yeah.
So I think that was the decision there. And like I said, it was just available. And yeah, I kind of just stuck with the BMWs. That was, I did have a RX-7 after all this that I was building. And it was like a big turbo FC RX-7. And I spent a lot of money and time building that car. I did all sorts of titanium piping and all that on it, just for somebody to crash into my garage and have a
No.
wall collapse on it. Yeah, so I actually I got to drive the car once before that happened, and it was a rocket ship. But yeah, sadly that one
Yeah.
didn't survive. But yeah, after I literally drove that E36 for like 2 seasons just in stock, you know, NA motor, like I said, coils. I always do bucket seat and roll cage. That's I don't agree with roll cage. This is like a hot take here. I don't agree with roll cage rules for most everybody.
Yeah.
Because for a lot of people it is a pricey
Oh,
entry
absolutely. Yeah.
level. For
Yeah.
me, it's the cost of material.
Yeah.
I have the benders and notchers and everything. For me, it's nothing. Um, but I think, you know, people will say this, and it's going to be a real hot take here, but people will see like pictures of guys crashing at a track and be like, "Oh my God, they didn't have a cage. What idiots!" But those same people will get in their car and drive 70 miles an hour down a highway and not wear a seatbelt
Right.
and think nothing of it.
Yeah.
But now I will say for me, my biggest thing is when I used to race motocross. One thing my dad used to always tell me, he's like, I would never want to put on like my knee pads that I would wear, my knee braces or stuff like that. And he would say, if you're coming down off a triple and you're about to case that jump or whatever, and you could freeze time and go back and put on that safety gear, would you? And the answer, of course, is, well, yeah. If you know you're going to crash, yeah. And he's like, well, so then put it on now. So that's kind
Exactly.
of like my thing. I also have a daughter and a house, so for me, having a roll cage is just that extra, safety net. And drifting it's motocross with a roll cage. It's BMX, it's skateboarding. I mean, drifting just attracts all the people that were into that kind of stuff.
Extreme
It's the
sport
same.
guys, right?
Yeah, it's the same rush. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it is. Yeah.
That's the
So
same thing we did with that Fox body that I was telling you about earlier. Almost the exact same story. I think I traded a lawnmower and $400 for two broken Fox bodies, and we put one together out of the two.
there you go.
And yeah, I'm a welder as well, so we caged it and then did a tear down on the engine, put her all back together, and we went a little bit overboard. We did a rear mount rad, and just because it's wintertime and we wanted to play with it, so we did a
Yep.
whole
Yeah. Yeah.
bunch of extra work on that. And by the time we got all the bugs and stuff worked out of it, we were 2/3 the way through the season last year. But yeah, we got out, and I did a couple runs with it, and then my boy Lucas jumps in and he's like, "Well, how does it do this?" I'm like, "I don't know. We're not chasing cows on dirt right now, so I'm not quite sure what to tell you." He gets out there and he clutch kicks, and fuck, around the corner we went, and it wasn't smoke rolling, but if we'd have had a little bit more power, there definitely would have been. And he carried it through, and away we went. And then the little shit, he's like, "I think that was all right." I'm like, yeah, that's a little bit more than
if
all right.
for your first clutch kick to be able to hold it in drift, that's really
Uh,
good. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We got a few
But
things we're gonna do to it this winter here yet, and then we drift on Thursday nights here, so we'll go out and play, and then on the weekends we'll run circle track and carry
right
on
on.
from there.
What motor do you guys have in it?
Just redid the 5 liter that's in there. Just
We have
NA.
yeah, we have a local guy with a Fox that has a 2J,
No way.
a 2J in it. Six inline six turbo.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing. And the car was in a fire, and
Oh,
he never repainted it. So it's the craziest thing because it's this old burnt Fox body, and it's just comes around the corner with an inline six screaming, turbo wastegates. It's awesome. Uh, yeah, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there's a few guys out here that run some pretty hot cars, and everybody else, like, whatever, they drive their car to the track. It's basically their daily, right? And come out and play. They throw a set of tires on there and go and burn away. But yeah, it's a great group of guys out there. You need help with something, or you're not sure about something. Most of the guys are willing to give you some pointers. And
Oh yeah, that's the best part about the drifting community,
yeah,
especially like growing up racing motocross. And I was even like amateur racing. People would talk shit to you, look at you dirty, this and that. You know, Now I'm in a professional series in drifting, and it's like the guys I'm competing against will be like, hey, you need a hand. If we're having trouble with something, everybody's so it's like that's like the drifting community to a T, and I hope that never changes. Is that
your
that
family, right?
yeah, that camaraderie. I mean,
Yeah,
the amount of hours late at night working on stuff to get to the track the next day with buddies, that's stuff you'll never pass up. And drifting's a great avenue to meet great people,
yeah.
for sure. um,
Yeah, your motocross kind of sounds like hockey up here. It's kind of cutthroat, and yeah, you're kind of on the same team, but if it comes right down to it, right, you gotta half the time you gotta watch out who's behind you there.
right,
So
right.
that's not how it's supposed to be, in my opinion. But hey, what do you do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so tell us about your pro drifter now. So where do you run? Who do you run against? And how many races a year do you do?
Yeah, so we do. So I'm in what's called pro spec, which is it's it's a pro series, Formula Drift, which is like the biggest, sanctioned drift series in the world. And we're called pro spec because we're regulated by tire size. So everybody in our class is on the same tire size. Whereas if you go into the Pro One class, it's essentially unlimited. It's like Group B rally. If
Oh
anybody
yeah,
is familiar
Killer
with
Bees.
rally,
Yeah,
yeah, there's no rules in that class. So the Pro Spec class is nice because it's more entry level friendly budget wise, even though
yeah.
it's still ridiculously expensive. But I guess to start how I got into it. So um, actually, I can see right behind me. This is Lake Erie Speedway is where I won my pro license. That was a 4 round series, all at the same track, Lake Erie Speedway.
Yeah.
And I wound up winning the series. Wound up beating out my good Canadian buddy Andrew Shorkey. Shout
Just shout out
outs.
to Andrew.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, he wound up his hydro e-brake wound up sticking in his top 16 battle,
Oh no.
which kind of like it gave me the points lead for the series there. We were like tied all year long, me and him, and we actually never battled each other either. It was always, we were just on other sides of the bracket, and we were gonna get that last battle that day, but his car broke. But so I wound up winning that series, which awarded my pro license, and basically, this is a long story, but I got to thank my one buddy Lorenzo. He actually let me use his car for that whole pro am series. I was building a LS powered E36, and I'm not good with V8s. And a buddy of mine helped build this V8. It was a LS 5.3 liter cam heads, and this thing only made 200 horsepower on the dyno, which is like less than stock. And we brought it to like two different tuners. We had two different engine builders look at it. It was like the mystery motor. Like nobody could figure out why this thing didn't make power. And you know, this was all like 2 weeks before the Pro Am series started, which I'd already signed up for. And my buddy was literally like, "Hey, I have this turbo E36, and I can't drive." He had a medical issue; he couldn't drive for the year,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Take it." And I was like, "Dude, thank you. Like, I'll give you money. How much do you want?" And he was just like, "I want to see you do good. Just use my car." And it was like the hugest weight was lifted off my shoulders because like I had a car, and it was a well set up car too. I actually was the one that tuned his car. I do tuning with Mega Squirt, if you're
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
familiar. Um, I remember it was funny that the first round of that pro am series. Cut me off if I'm rambling on, but
Oh no,
I just
that's
keep
good.
thinking
That's
of
what
funny
we're
stories.
that's what we're here for.
But the first round of that pro am series, I almost didn't qualify. I did my first qualifying run and just choked. And then my second qualifying run, I like qualified really low, and they were only taking like top 16 qualifiers into the bracket battles. And I actually got beat out by somebody, and I was in 17th place, and we
Uh,
actually got in on a technical because it turned out the guy didn't go through tech and didn't have like brake lights or something. There was some weird thing where he didn't have a roll
oh,
cage. I forget what it was. But so they were basically like, "Hey, you can't compete." So they're like, "Dan, you're now in 16th, like,
you're
you're
in.
good to go." And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I remember that was like the Friday night was qualifying, and then Saturday was the comp. I remember waking up Saturday morning, talking to like my buddy who was helping me out, and I was like, "Man, I'm not cut out for this." Like, I thought I was going to qualify and like do good right off the bat, and I was like really beating myself up. And where I live, our local track is up in the mountains. It rains like every event. So I've gotten really accustomed to driving in rain, and of course I live like, in the mountains, snowy roads all the time. But right before our top 16 battle, it downpoured at the track. And, like people, if you don't live where it rains a lot, you don't get used to driving, in that environment.
Yep.
I remember, so the way drifting works is if I qualified 16th, I battle the number one qualifier. So I was kind of like beating myself up, oh, I'm never going to beat this guy. He qualified first. I barely got in, but it downpoured. And I remember I saw him like rubbing his shoe on the pavement. And I'm like, I said to my buddy, I'm like, he looks worried. Like, I'm just going to drive in the rain, like I always do. And shouts to Kevin. He's a homie now. I didn't know him at the time, but he's a good dude. But we they waved us out. The lights go out. We shoot off, and first turn he spun out, and I just like stayed in it, and I was chasing first, and I passed him when he spun out, and it was like the most badass thing ever. Like it felt so cool because it was like I literally went from like the lowest of lows to like, oh my god, like I'm gonna win my first battle as long as I don't spin out, during my lead run, and wound up doing fine. And it's weird. You hear all sorts of different racers talk about like momentum, like, oh, keep the momentum going. And it was like I won that first battle, then we went into the top 8, and I won that battle, and it was like the ball just kind of kept rolling, and I wound up winning that first event, and yeah, wound up winning the whole series. So long story to get here, but so I got my pro license and decided, I wasn't going to take a year off to build a car. I want to go right into it while it's still kind of, fresh,
Yep.
and so in 3.5 months, me and some really good buddies of mine literally just bought a E46 shell for like $200, caged it, gutted it, stripped it down to nothing, and literally 3.5 months. I mean, we spent every day working on that car, multiple hours, just all hands on deck. And like, we're not like I'm not factory or anything like that. Like it's all coming out of my own pocket. And
Yep.
granted, I got some great partners, but which we can get into that then. But just the time, like there was no team building the car for us. We were doing it,
Yep.
and it was a lot of stress. But come April, we had the car on the dyno. A little bit about the car we built. So it's a 2002 BMW E46 coupe, and literally just we had a 6.2 LS
Yep.
built motor with a pro charger on it, and winner's quick change. We have a 4-speed dog box transmission. Those were like I needed those because as good as I am a drifter, I'm terrible at driving stick. And actually, in pro am, every battle I lost was because I missed a gear. So
Blue shift on
yeah,
there.
so I was like, I need this, I need the dog box, I need the sequential, or not the, we don't have sequential. I need the straight cut gears where I can just slam it in. It's always going to go in gear.
Yep.
So that was good money spent there. And a bunch of other bits that we can get into. Fuel suspension, who I partnered up with Fuel Suspension during my pro am season. So kept them on board. FDF, Canadian company. There are we run their angle kit, the full Mantis angle. And let's see what else do we got on there that's kind of cool. Um, everything's a pro axles. They're like rated at, excuse me, they're rated at like 1,300 horsepower. Um, yeah, I mean it was
What's that car putting out for horses?
so the first the first motor made 749 horsepower. That was on 12 pounds of boost, I
Yep.
believe. We dynoed that engine all day long. a great guy local to me is Matt Happel. He runs this little group called Sloppy Mechanics. I don't know if you ever heard of them. They're known for putting like big turbos on LSs. But he tuned the car all day on the dyno, no problems. Our first day actually running the car at the track, testing it out. I do 4, 5, 6 runs, whatever, and the data logger starts showing like 20 psi oil pressure,
Oh
and
no.
it was like, oh, what the hell? So then that was motor one, blew it up like first day testing.
Spun a
Overnight,
bearing in there, or I guess it doesn't really matter what happened, but
spun bearing. Yep,
yeah,
spun
got
spun two bearings, two or three bearings.
fuck.
Uh, Overnighted a bunch of stuff from Summit, rebuilt the motor in a week, get it in, get to the dyno, re-dynoed it. Everything went great on the dyno again. Then we get to the track and we're like, I was just letting it idle because we are gonna do an oil change at the track or something because we were like really tight on time. This was like I think it was a week before I had to leave for the first round of pro drifting, which was at Road Atlanta.
Yeah.
So we were like changing the oil at the track for whatever reason because we were like out of time. And I was just letting it warm up to get the oil hot to drain it and change it. And sure as shit, like drain the oil and there's all sparkles. I mean, it looked
Oh.
like glitter in the oil pan. We're like, what the heck? Like, man, my pro drifting career is over before it started. Like I was like heartbroken and spending all that money to build the car and then going through two motors in essentially a week was like just devastating. But thankfully, like my old lady is super supportive, and she was like, there's got to be something you can do. There's got to be something. And I'm like, I'm out of money. Like I don't know what I can do. And I gotta give a huge shout out to my buddy Alex at work. I work with this guy, and I helped train him and taught him a bunch of stuff. But he had like extra money, and he was like, dude, here's I told him, I was like, hey, there's a junkyard near my house. They literally have a 6 liter engine out of a running van. And I was like, but it's like $1,600. Like, I don't have the money for that. And he was like, he handed me a check and he was like, here, dude, go get that motor, go chase your dream. So it was kind of like, well, shit. Now what? Like, I only got 4 days, so I like called off of work, picked up this junkyard motor. So between my group of guys, we decided like, all right, we're not gonna pull the bottom end apart. Like we don't have time, we don't have parts. We're just gonna go factory LS bottom end. We'll put the heads and cam that I have and intake, all the supplementals.
Yeah, the
We'll
add-ons there.
put all that stuff on and we'll just see what it does. So we're putting this thing together. It's like 2 days before we gotta leave to go to Road Atlanta and I got my buddy on the hook for like the next morning to be on the dyno to dyno it, because now it's a different motor. It's a six
Yeah.
liter versus a 6.2, and we're putting the trans up to it, and this is that G-force transmission. And I noticed, wait a second, the trans is bottoming out, and there's still like a half-inch gap between the bell housing and the engine, And I'm like, what the hell? We ordered this from the from the builder, that builds these beautiful transmissions. Well, it wound up that we bought the adapter. It was like the SFI bell housing.
Yeah.
When we measured it out, you know, must have been like a Friday afternoon when the dude fitted up because it was out like a half inch. Like he wound up fitting the one plate on like the wrong corner. You know what I mean? So that it
Yeah.
was out the thickness of that plate. And what was happening was when we were, whatever, we're not professional mechanics, so like it's almost embarrassing to say this, but like, we're ramming the transmission on with, like impact drivers, which probably shouldn't do, but we never noticed that it was bottoming out. So what wound up was being the cause was the input shaft on the trans was side loading the crank and then wiping out I think it's the
The
thrust
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 on there.
bearing.
Yeah.
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 And then the last four cylinders were getting wiped out because there was no oil getting back there.
Yep.
So now, mind you, this is 2 days before we got to leave. We got a dyno appointment like in the morning. Luckily, like I said, I had great friends, great crew, so supportive. My one buddy has a plasma table, and I'm actually a engineer now, in trade. But so like I got on SolidWorks, quick modeled up like a spacer plate. As I'm modeling this thing up, he's driving back to his house. He has a CNC plasma table. He burns this plate out, comes back. We bolt everything together. It's like 7 in the morning. None of us slept. We go, we get some Red Bulls, and then we head off to the dyno. And this crazy junkyard LS Frankenstein contraption wound up making 710 horsepower
On a
on
stock bottom end.
stock bottom end. We wound up turning the boost up. We were running like 16 pounds of boost, which was like, my buddy that knows LSs, he's like, that's the limit. He's like, you've got plenty of fuel and the Pro Charger can shove a lot more, but he's like, the stock pistons, you don't want to run more than that. Now we do run on ethanol, which helps,
Oh, that helps. Okay.
a
Yeah.
little bit, but whatever, that was the limit. And man, I just keep going on and on. But yeah, that was we wound up dynoing it. We painted the car that night after the dyno, literally loaded the car on the trailer with wet paint. And it was like, you know, we got a 12-hour drive to Georgia. Like the paint will dry on the drive.
Yeah,
And that's
that's your
literally,
downdraft.
dude, we literally, like, we pulled in the pits, do all the registry stuff you have to do. And like everybody else is like setting up their tents and all this, canopies and whatnot. And we're literally like, okay, paint's not tacky anymore. Let's get the decals on. Like, it was a hectic first round for sure. Uh, but we made it, and then we go. And this first round was like so much crap. We wound up doing like, we would do one lap and the thing would overheat, and like not like to the point where it was like critical damage overheating, but like we do one lap and get to like 220, and
Yeah.
then it would start to like like exponentially climb, and we'd have to like dump cold water on the rad to like let it cool down. And we fought with that all weekend, couldn't figure it out. But I still wound up qualifying the first round, and then I wound up losing my first battle. I wound up crashing into the lead driver. But it almost didn't matter because we knew we couldn't complete 2 laps in a row anyway,
Yeah.
because the overheating issue. And it wound up being that first motor we blew up. It did overheat once all the friction from all the bearings and that
Yeah.
being wiped out. And I never saw this before, but the tubes in the radiator actually like swelled up in the middle and pinched on the end. So we actually had no like cross flow of water through this radiator.
Wow.
And I didn't find that out until after Road Atlanta, when I decided to put in a new radiator. And I essentially, I don't make my own radiators, but I use a Griffin radiator that I like cut and make dual pass and like weld the AN fittings on. And when I'm super budget, so I literally like cut the AN fittings off the other rad to save the $30 for the fitting. And when I cut it off, I looked in, I'm like, oh my god, these tubes are pinched shut. Like, of course we were overheating.
Oh, that makes sense. It
Um,
must have been steamed off or something. It was swelled and then, like you say, pinched
yeah,
off
it
on the
just
ends of
pinched them
this.
off.
Hmm.
So that's yeah, so there's 4 rounds in pro spec. So we go to Atlanta, Georgia, which is Road Atlanta, pretty popular track. In America at least. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's in video games too, like Forza and that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we've played on the Xbox and run around there a few times. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that track, we do Englishtown, New Jersey. Then we go to Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis, And then the furthest trip for me is Salt Lake City, Utah, which is that was like a 34-hour drive for
Oof.
me.
Yeah.
But it's, got to drive across the country, which was cool. But yeah, those are the 4 rounds for the pro spec class. The pro class does 8 rounds. They go to Florida and California and different places like that. But yeah, we do those 4 rounds, and it's a lot of time, a lot of effort to make it to those rounds. And our first year was pretty rough with getting the car together and having all these issues. And also, prior to driving this car, I drove, a 300 the highest horsepower drift car I had was 350 horsepower. It was, a turbo E36.
Yeah.
So going from that to 700 horsepower and like grippy tires, like, because we run on like race compound tires,
Yeah.
whereas like, I don't know how you guys do it, but like when I first started drifting, like I would run what we call like takeoffs. Like I would
Yeah.
go to
That's
the
how it is.
local tire store, place, and they would have tires that mom
They
changed
fit
on
the
her
rim and
minivan, and
yeah.
yeah, if they fit the rim, and you give them like, for us it was like you give them $2-3 because they were gonna throw them out anyway, and you get a couple laps on them, and
Yeah.
yeah, so going from like those kind of tires to like race compound big sticky tires is a lot of learning, with the way it was like driving a whole new car.
Well, I can just imagine, yeah.
Uh,
Wanting to push you rather than slide too, right? You gotta stay in
oh,
it to keep things rolling.
like the the biggest thing to explain the difference, like anybody that's ever been in a drift car or driven a drift car, you get that like side G, when you're in drift. That my pro car like puts you back in the seat, when you're going sideways, which like I never experienced that before, because it's essentially like, 700 horsepower drag car isn't anything to like joke about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not into drag racing, so I don't know, but like to me that's a lot of power. So having 700 horsepower while you're drifting, like it's gonna throw you in the seat, like um,
Yeah,
but
especially with tires like that. I mean, it wants to go forward and you're forcing it to go sideways, right?
yeah, 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 yep,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, we run our spec tires. It's a 255, 35, 18 GT radial. They're like Champiro SXs. And everybody in my class is on the same tire, so it's kind of cool
Just
because
evens everything out, I guess, eh?
it does. But then there's all, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. There's people with, I mean, there's a lot of people with more money than me, but but there's like I'm on the lower end of the spectrum as far as power goes. I'm not the lowest. There's a guy that runs like 600 horsepower, but generally in my class it's like 900 to 1,000, which is blows my mind because I mean, I mean that like Mustang you have might make what, like 250 wheel
Yeah,
horsepower,
right in that range there somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. We
and
never
it's
dynoed
enough.
it, but it's right there. So
Yeah, but it's enough to get you sideways and have
oh
a good
yeah, for
time.
sure. Yeah.
So it's like to think of that difference to 1,000 horsepower, kind of tells you how much that tire really changes things. The grip level.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, I would say that one of the biggest challenges I have with some of the competitors is that just that drive off the line, you know, because I have a theory and people might disagree with it, but like your power level almost doesn't make a difference because there's only so much grip you can get out of the tire.
Yeah.
So if you're say, let's just say I'm going to throw numbers out here, right? So
Yeah.
let's just say 700 horsepower is the max horsepower you need to spin that tire. Sure, if you have 1,000 horsepower, you're going to only be using like 70% of your throttle. But where the makes the difference is on that straight line approach to the first corner where you're essentially drag racing, and I have 700 horsepower, and somebody else, I know one of the guys I battled, he had like, I think it was 1,150 horsepower, and it was like trying to keep up with him on the straightaway was such a struggle. It wound up like throwing me off, for the rest of my run. And that was actually one of the most surprising things for me, going from uh, just grassroots drifting to pro am to pro, was like when we started on my first battle. I'm used to sitting next to a 300 horsepower car, 200 horsepower car, whatever. This guy next to me with his pro charged Corvette just shoots off like a rocket. Dude, I'm not gonna lie to you. I was sleeping on the line. I was like, oh, geez, and since then I learned, like, it's a drag race to the first corner. Like, you
Yeah.
gotta get on it quick and shift fast, and you don't want to spin. You want to keep your traction. Which that was, once again, that was a learning curve for me, because I never did drag racing, or even like street racing from a dig. I never did anything like that. So to me, it was always just drifting with your buddies, which is like, going fast really doesn't matter. It's kind of just grassroots
Just going out
events.
with play, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you run wide lines and have fun, get on doors with people. But competition, it's a race. Like, you're racing while you're drifting. It's pretty wild. Um, but yeah, yeah. So that's this year coming up. I'm actually, because of financial reasons, I'm going to be running actually that same engine from last. So that junkyard motor lasted all year long.
Wow. On
And I
16 pounds of boost.
Yeah, and once the season ended, took everything apart, and surprisingly, everything looks fantastic. So literally, just going to regasket it and get it back in the car. Now, that's just so I have the car ready to go, so I can be a little bit more relaxed this year, and not like doing things the night before, having to drive 12 hours.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I picked up another block, and I'm going to take it to a machine shop and have them balance it, line bore, and I'm going to do pistons and rods, and just
Yeah.
have like that rotating assembly. And where I live, there's not many options for machine shops, and they're all kind of booked, crazy, far out.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm going to run the junkyard block until I get that rotating assembly and block, done up there, and then that'll go in, and then we have then we can start playing. We can turn the boost up even higher.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what we got going on in it going into next year. But it's enough power. It's definitely enough power to be competitive.
And
It's not.
obviously, I mean, you're doing something right if you're running with them guys. The 30% more power than you've got.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
It's Yeah, no, I mean, trust me, I would love to have the 1300 horsepower Texas speed, motor, but it's not in my budget.
well, you're proving that you
So
don't actually need it, right?
that's kind of one of my goals. Like, I want to be, like, my dream would be to be that driver that shows the average guy, like, hey, you can do this on a budget,
Yeah.
because, like, I don't know how, like, circle track racing is a little different, locally. I know, like, we have different dirt tracks, and you can get into some of the cheaper ends of it. But,
Yeah.
like, for example, take like a Formula One fan, somebody that watches Formula One. Like, the odds of that person ever being able to step foot in, let alone a Formula 3 car versus a Formula 1 car,
Exactly.
it's unachievable.
Yeah.
But what I love about drifting is I want to show people, like, I started drifting 5 years ago. Like, you can do it, and you can do it on a budget too. And that was one of the coolest experience of meeting different fans and that. Everybody that I kind of dealt with, they were always like, "Man, I like how your car is kind of low key. It's simple. It's." And that's kind of like what I'm going for. Is just showing that anybody can do it. It's just
That's
chase
awesome.
chase the dream.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, yeah, it's
So speaking of budget, and we haven't touched on that yet, who do you have for sponsors? What do you got
Yeah,
on board with
so
them?
so my main partners as of now, I don't have a title sponsor. Still looking. So, but we got Ulsa Tools, Canadian company. I don't know if you have any experience with Ulsa Tools or
Nope,
not.
never heard of them before.
You've never heard of Ulsa Tools.
Nope.
You've probably seen ads for their magnetic socket organizers. Um,
Okay, yeah, I guess
they're
I
like
have. And yeah,
they're super popular. But they actually do make really good tools. And I'm not just saying that. I will be upfront. They did send me a bunch of tools for free to test
okay,
out and review.
yeah,
And I've, I never worked full time as a mechanic, so like, I know there's like the big debates between like Snap-on and Matco or this and that. But the also tools, it's like that top level quality, but not at that price.
yeah.
And Canadian company. So it's funny. I'm actually sponsored by a few Canadian companies and great customer service. So yeah, also tools. Shout out to them. They got great, gear wrenches, sockets, ratchets. Like I said, all sorts of tool organizers for sockets, wrenches, everything, hammers. It's great, great quality tools. So they're one of my main sponsors as of now. Feel suspension, of course. I've been with them since I did pro am. They make phenomenal coilovers for many different vehicles, but definitely BMWs. Like a lot of different pro drivers run feel suspension. Like it's kind of it's kind of the best.
That's
Like
the name on everybody's car there. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're definitely not the cheapest, but that's because you're paying for the quality. I
yeah,
mean, I've smashed my car into so many different things, and when stuff doesn't break and it keeps working, like you paid for the quality.
yeah.
But those max speeding rod coilovers I used to run, although they work good for the budget, like if you bump a curb or tap somebody's tire, like coilover is going to be bent in half, and you got to get another one.
Oh, shit.
So
Yeah.
yeah, feels definitely good. Tirestacks.com. They actually sponsor every pro driver. And that's one of the things they do is like when we go to our pro events, like I pay for my tires, but I don't have to bring them. They bring them to the track. They mount all our tires. They dispose of the bald tires when we're done with them.
Yeah.
That's part of the deal is they handle all of that. So huge shout out to Frank at Tire Stacks. Great company there. Rugged radios. We one of the things people might not realize about professional drifting is I have a spotter, so he'll relay information to me, not as I'm like physically driving, but like after each run I do, he'll say like, hey, you were shallow there, or pick up your pace here, or whatever.
Yeah.
So having rugged radios on board is awesome. I have like the whole integrated setup in my helmet where I literally just have like a push button on my dash and
So is it a two-way radio? Like you can talk to him, or it just like
two
him
way.
him?
It's more than two way. It's like I can speak with like multiple of my crew at the same time.
Oh, cool.
It doesn't like cut out. I don't know if I'm explaining it right. I'm not
It's
good
like you're
with
on a
like
cell phone, basically, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And then like I know we have like multiple channels set up because like I'm kind of particular with who I want to talk to when I'm in the car. So like when I'm in the car, I only talk to my spotter, but then my whole crew can hear what I'm saying, and then the spotter can talk to everybody else, but like I only hear what the spotter's saying.
Hmm.
It's really neat. Somebody else in my team that's more technologically skilled set all that up. I'm still like a blue collar welder at heart, so the technology stuff, gets away from me. But yeah, rugged radios, Link ECU. That's another part of our spec class is everybody runs a Link ECU.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was part of like winning the license. We got a free ECU to run, which was awesome. and they also hooked me up with a huge discount on a bunch of other stuff. I have the full digital display in my dashboard that I can literally look at anything, and we could program it to do everything as well. I have like the soft touch keypad. Everything's on, push buttons. It's great. When I start my car, before I actually like push the starter, but when I power up the ECU, we have like an inside joke. Everybody calls me Farmer Dan, because I live out in the country. And when the dash starts up, it's a picture of me in like coveralls standing in a cornfield. It's not actually me. Somebody photoshopped my face on a farmer, but so you can do anything with that ECU, I guess is the point I'm getting at. But then yeah, also FDF. That's the steering angle I run. So shouts to FDF. Huge angle. I have like 80 degrees of steering angle,
Oh,
and yeah, I could adjust the Ackerman angle. I don't know how familiar you are with Ackerman angle.
oh yeah, yeah. I did a
Yeah,
bunch of the research on all that stuff with when we were building the Fox. I mean, we didn't get into that because I can't change it or at all in there. But yeah, I have a pretty good idea what all that's all about.
yeah. So FDF. That's the angle I run. Then Deechworks. Deechworks. I don't know if you ever heard of them.
No,
Fueling company. So I actually that was a huge help for me because once we partnered up with them, they were like, "What do you need?" And I literally gave them a number, and I was like, we're aiming for 750," and they literally sent me a sheet and was like, "Okay, here's everything you need," and everything was like pretty much plug and play. Like we have four fuel pumps in my car,
wow,
just because of the way, like, redundancy and making sure, like, fail safes. If one pump fails, I could still complete a run. But they hooked everything up, and I know that that first time we were on the dyno, I told them 750, and literally like we got to 749, and the tuner was like, "Your head's got plenty more in it. The Pro Charger, that's got plenty more in it." He goes, "Your injectors are literally capping out at 750," and I was like, "Well, that's what I said I wanted." Like they hit it on the number. So yeah, shout out to Deesworks. Um, let's see what else is there. I know I'm rambling on with each one, so I'm kind of
no, no. That's what I
uh,
want to hear. Like, let's hear who they are and what they do. So if anybody's looking for something,
yeah.
then
So
you hit 'em up.
Summit Racing hooked us up a little bit during that whole debacle of blowing the engines up.
Yeah,
They're not like a full-on partner, but they did help us out huge with they basically like I called them and was like damn near crying, and they wound up overnighting those parts for us without charging us,
yeah,
for like, so like huge help there. G-Force, who makes the 4-speed dog box transmission that I have, they're a huge help. And like I said, I suck at driving stick, so having that transmission is is huge for me. GT Radial tires, so that's another part of the Pro Spec series. Is we're all sponsored by GT Radial, so we get a huge discount on those tires that we run. Which thank God, because we go through a ton of those tires. I don't know how I would afford it without their support. Um, yeah, and then gotta give a shout out to my boy Cody from Cleaver Diesel Performance. So I know I touched on it at the beginning of the episode here. I used to tow around with an old Suburban, 2500. But my buddy Cody let us use his Cummins dually all year long to go
oh,
across
nice.
country, which was like a huge help because like I literally, as reliable as my old Suburban is, like I don't think it would have handled the Rocky Mountains, pulling a trailer and all that. So huge shout out to him. And then just touching on the last couple, Condor Speed Shop. They do all sorts of bushings, poly bushings, mono bushings, all sorts of stuff. We run their windows. I have Lexan windows.
Yeah,
I run all that. Yeah, so that's that's it for now. Definitely room to grow. I've been that's part of the professional motorsports career is a lot of like every year I got to make a proposal deck, and I'm constantly cold calling companies trying to get in. I feel like I could sell it to anybody, but it's so hard to get that your foot in the door to get that
Exactly.
that like the face to face is hard to get.
Yeah.
Because the one cool thing about drifting that a lot of other motorsports don't have, on a professional level at least, is at a drift event, fans are allowed to walk through the pits
Yeah.
and like walk right up to your car. So like the amount of interactions you can have, and like having a display table with different companies' product, the amount of engagement there. I mean, if you just think about the cost of a company taking their stuff to a tech show, or like somewhere like PRI, they're going to get that 4 times a year, from partnering with a professional drifter. And this year I'm pretty sure Formula Drift sold out every single round. So I
Oh
know, like,
wow.
when we were in Atlanta, that was like 60,000 people in
For one event.
attendance. Yeah, well, for multiple days too.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
they sold out. I think it was like they sold out Friday and Saturday. Thursday they didn't sell out, but Friday and Saturday was sold out. And so that's like 60,000 people all there to see, you know, product. And I feel, I just need to get I'm new to the whole networking thing. That's part of it. And cold calling people sucks. Like, I'm not good at that, but I'm trying to learn. I've been watching, as I said before, I like do a lot of research and learning. So I've been watching a lot of like sales tactics and stuff like that to try and you know help sell a sponsor.
Yeah.
They do make, there are people that their job is like sponsorship brokers, but like I can't even. I called one of them, and like the amount the retainer would almost cover my whole year of drifting, and it's like, well, like, I don't have this money to give you to begin with. So
Yeah.
I think they're more set up for like the top dogs, which I'm not there yet. But
Oh, hey, as long as the guy's working towards it, right?
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah.
the dream right there. Nice.
So I know you said about setup on the Mustang. I got a little tidbit here for you.
Yeah.
So when people start drifting, I feel like it's usually, oh, I have too much grip. I have too much grip. And then you kind of get used to it, and you'll start dropping those tire pressures down. You'll start gripping the car up more and more. So my buddy that has that Mustang, believe it or not, he cut his axle tube and literally heated it up and bent it in to tow in the rear tires.
Really?
Yeah, because that little bit of, I think he did like 3/8 of an inch toe in the rear,
Yeah.
and that little bit gave a lot more forward bite in drift.
Hmm.
And yeah, literally. Now, once again, we're also a bunch of rednecks, but literally cut it, welded it. The weld did wind up failing at one drift event, but then he brought it to me, and I actually, like,
Has no
beveled
bubble
it, and
gum on it.
yeah, I beveled it and TIG welded it, like
Yeah.
how it
Yeah.
should be. But yeah, it works. It's so funny, but it's because, like, I know you touched on it earlier with I think you were talking about angle. The Mustangs are tough, man. I mean, they're hard to set up.
That's what I've been told. And they're so short, and like I said, we grabbed it because it was the price was right on it, and that's what we were running with. So I figured, the hell that it's a good little starter car, and that was the first engine that Lucas had pulled apart, and we yanked it apart, put it together. Actually, ended up dropping a valve in it, blew
Oh
that one
no.
up, and then didn't realize it at the time. There was a crack in cylinder 7, so we
Oh
could
geez.
never get the air bled out of the coolant system. Like, what the hell is going on with this thing? Like, we're constantly overheating and change this, change that, and then end up blowing it up. And then once we looked in there, yeah, there was a crack probably 4 inches long.
Jeez.
So okay, that block's no good, so we yanked that out, and then ended up picking up basically the same thing, a junkyard block, and then dumped the rotating assembly in there and put her back together, and yeah, away we went. And then overheating issues, and it ended up being their biggest issue was the alternator wasn't putting out enough juice. So we were running out of power for the fuel pump and the
Yep, yep, yep.
fans. We had electric fans in there, and they just sucked so much power that didn't realize it at the time. But once I did figure it out, just put a 140 amp alternator in there, and then away we went. Like most of the problems went away after that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, we
And
we had kind of copied the Detroit Drift lower arms there, you know how they just chop it out around the spring pocket and put coilovers in there, just kind of copied and pasted. And I mean,
yeah, yeah.
like say a welder myself, so we did that, and I don't know, we ended up did the same thing, chopped the steering arm on there, so we just max it right out, like the tires rub up against the frame in there. So if we end up playing a
Right
lot, I'll
on.
have to get a little bit wider angle kit to get some more turn out of it. But yeah, it's good enough to get started with and go and play. So
Yeah, yeah. I I my buddy's Fox body drives. It actually drives really nice. So I'll have to get back with you then. And I don't know too much about his setup, like how he has it set up,
yeah,
but I will say a thing is like it literally like you point the car where you want to go and it goes.
it just goes, eh?
I know he is on fuel suspension, so maybe that's
That's a
shameless
big
plug.
ticket, all of it right there. Get the right
How'd
suspension
you
under it.
Yeah, yeah. How'd you was this your first time doing a rear mount setup?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Rear mount rad?
yeah.
Did you guys have any issues with that at all or
Other than we couldn't get the air out of the system, it seems to work. We actually ended up with the rad and fans out of a oh, what the hell was it? An '04 like Escalade or Tahoe or something like that. Went and found the biggest rad I could find to stuff into that spot, and then
right,
dual fans in there, and then yeah, just let her rip off of that, and big lines running to the back. I probably should have put an inline pump in there, but figured what the hell, we'll try it like this, and if it works, it works. If not, we'll change it up if we have to. But yeah, it seemed to work. I've got to put an extra bleeder in right above where the thermostat is. I just put a metal coupler in there and then a brass plug in there, so we prop up the front end and bleed all the air out through that.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it seems to work.
That was on my pro car. That was the first time I set up a rear mount rad. And I did all the research. And that was the one thing I screwed up was we set it up like a BMW where I have like an expansion tank above the rad.
Yeah,
But I didn't run essentially didn't run a bleeder line from the bottom of the rad up to the expansion tank. So we would like wound up getting air would get trapped in the lines,
yeah,
and then it would never bleed out. But I did fix that since then, and now I have like a like I think I touched on it earlier. Like literally, I buy these Griffin radiators from Amazon for
yep.
like $180, and then I can literally like $20 in fittings, and it's literally like a $1,400 setup. Like that's I mean, you would know the beauty of being a fabricator is like you can. If I had to pay for fabrication work, there's no way I would be able to afford any of
It's
this. I mean, it's literally like um, it's a lifesaver.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a big hold up for a lot of guys there.
Which actually, a little off topic, but if you don't mind, what kind of industry are you in with welding?
So the little shop that I've got, we do structural steel, so buildings and anything
Columns
like
and
that.
beams.
Columns and beams, yeah. And then we
All
also
right.
do gravel conveyors. So yeah, lots of aggregate stuff. We've sent conveyors into gold mines and silver mines and diamond mines. We were way up north, whatever, probably 15, 20 years ago, something like that. Frac sand conveyors. I mean, a conveyor is a conveyor, really, at the end of the day.
Right, right,
Um, Lots of farm repairs. Like we're kind of in the heart of farming country here. So in the
right
spring and
on.
the fall, when one of the farmers brings something in, I mean, you drop what you're doing to get them back out in the field.
Right, right,
So
right.
do that,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
basically
awesome.
anything but B pressure, like that. And then at home here, I do a bit of cage work and custom little fixes and that kind of stuff
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah,
cars, that sort of thing. So yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's cool, man.
yeah, yeah. I'm doing that. Fuck, I've been welding since I was like, I think my dad showed me I was probably 11, 10, 11 years old or something like that, and I've been
Yeah,
building junk ever since. So
yeah, yeah. That's
that's 30 years.
it is funny. I graduated high school like with no experience in anything, and I was a cook at the time, and like my Jetta that I was driving around broke, and the part I needed was so much. My dad had to front me money, and he was like, oh, you need a full time job by next week. Like I'm not helping pay for your car. And it's funny that my buddy was a welder at a shop, uh, and they were doing like aluminum like rack carts for like kitchens,
Oh
that like
yeah,
you'd
yeah.
you'd like put donuts on or whatever. It was all like aluminum spray arc, and he was like, "Hey, we need grinders, guys to clean up welds and brush welds." And at the time, whatever it was, paying was more than I was making working in a kitchen. So I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Like, I'll come in and fill out an application. And he told me, he goes, "When you fill out the application, tell them you know how to flux core weld." And I was like, like I had no idea. I was like, "All right, whatever." Like, I've played with this was my neighborhood friend growing up, and like I've played with his little welder, which was a flux core welder,
Yeah,
from like I don't know if you ever heard of Harbor Freight.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think you guys have like a. Do you know of Princess Auto? Is that a
Oh
thing
yeah,
by you? Yeah.
lots
So
of
so
lots
I
of
mean,
time spent around Princess Auto.
I'm a huge fan of zip ties and buy supplies. So
Yep.
yeah, yeah, he's always talking about the Princess Auto. But anyway, so I played with his little MIG welder a couple times, and yeah, the guy I filled out the application. The guy goes, "Yeah, your buddy says you know how to weld," and I was like, yeah." And then he was like, "Oh, well, we'll give you a little test." It was just like two. It was like a fillet weld, on two square tubes.
Yeah.
And like the guy was like, "Oh, let me go grab you a helmet." My buddy quick was like, "Here, watch what I do." And he was like, "Just do it exactly like this." And like I was always real good at like watching people and doing mimicking, and like, yeah, man, I did it and I got hired, and it was literally like from there out, I literally like self-taught, like just watching videos, reading books. Like I literally, at that first job, we had a like I was a MIG welder, and then they
Yeah.
had like the two TIG welding booths, and like I would eat my lunch in like a minute, and then like rush over and like practice TIG welding,
Role play.
and
Yeah.
then like eventually they moved me into the TIG booth, and then I worked there for so long, and then it was funny. I jumped around like my first 3 years welding. I jumped around like, man, every like 6 months. It was like, but it was always like a progression up. You know what I
Oh yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
I was constantly like, oh, I learned how to TIG weld. Then I went and worked at like a sheet metal shop, where we did all sorts of, like little jobs, but it was all thinner stuff. And then from there, I'm sure you've heard or seen weldingtipsandtricks.com.
Yeah.
Jody, I watched that guy's like whole repertoire, and like literally like this is a funny story. I don't know. Have you ever done like X-ray pipe or any type of pressure vessels or anything like
I've
that?
never done that. I mean, we did it in school a little bit. We learned
Yeah.
how to
So
weld push roots and hot pass, all the rest of stuff, but
yeah.
I never
So
ever got into it commercially, right? So,
so I never did that either, but I watched videos on it and I actually applied for a job that was doing like a whole X-ray pipeline, all TIG. It was a vacuum jacketed pipelines for cryogenics.
oh yeah,
And I remember I went in and like I set up the test piece, like it was 6G 2-inch schedule 80 stainless pipe, and I set it up, how I saw in the videos, and I welded around it. And then I remember he was like, "All right, well let's cut it apart and see what it looks like." And I was like, I froze. I was like, "Oh man, this guy's gonna find out that like I'm a sham. This is gonna be so embarrassing." I remember he cut it apart and he was like, "Hey, it looks pretty good, kid." And he like flipped it over to me and like it had like full penetration on the inside, smooth bead. I was like, man, thanks, weldingtipsandtricks.com. But yeah, then and then through that, like I met some good people that actually taught me like the ins and outs, like as we were working. So
Yeah.
yeah, man,
Why to do and how to do
yeah,
it. Yeah.
welding is a fantastic trade to get into. I mean, the amount of money you can make with little school,
Yeah.
it's more hands on. I mean, it's essentially it's all like my opinion. Maybe you disagree. You tell me. But people ask me often like, "Oh, how do I get into welding?" And my number one response is like, "Go buy a welder. Go buy a welder. Buy a hood and just
Go and play.
practice. Try it
Yeah.
out." I mean, like there of course there's knowledge that you need to learn on the back end to substantiate it, but like the practice behind the hood is like what really makes the difference for
And
sure.
that's how I cut my teeth with it. Like I said, the old man showed me when I was a kid, and I I figured it out. Like we had an old, I don't remember what the hell, it was an old Arctech welder or something, like stick welder, and you just take the raw or the cable out,
Oh,
put
you
it
had
into a different
you had the
spot.
different plugs for the different amperage
Yeah,
ranges.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And I figured out, okay, well, this gray rod you got to run it in here, and this white one you run it over there. And I had no idea what the hell I was welding with, but I got good enough where I could make the slag peel off it. And I remember the very first time I did that, I had it in my hands and took it to the house and put it on my dresser in there. I was so damn proud
yeah,
of that. And,
yeah,
oh yeah, fuck! Like I always said when I was a kid, if you wanted to find me, either go look in my room, either I was building something out of Lego, how to model it, or go look in the shop at out at the farm and look for the bright light because that's where I was, one spot or
yeah,
the other. So, yeah,
yeah,
time under the
yeah,
hood, man. That's how you do it.
yeah. Well, it's cool because like every weld you do is an opportunity to do a better weld than your last one.
Yep,
And I mean, anybody that's a welder, like you're constantly trying to do better, and it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. You're always trying to perfect it.
yep.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Oh yeah,
that's that's kind of how
I
I got into
yeah.
welding. So
Obviously, it's done well for you if that's the case. So, okay, so you said earlier that your family wasn't into cars or anything like that. When you told them that, hey, I'm selling my or shutting down the welding shop and I'm going to chase this dream of racing that I'm after now, what did everybody say when you told them that?
yeah, so that's actually that's a really good question, and I got to say this. I don't know. She's not in the other room anymore, so but I do want to say my old lady, she is just so supportive. We've been together for 13 years, and she was the one. Like before we went to Road Atlanta, when like blow up two motors, like I was literally like just like almost shut down. I was like, well, that's it. Like I gave it my all, and she was the one. She was like, no, keep. There's got to be something you can do. Keep pushing. Like, you can do it. And she's we have a daughter together, beautiful 2-year-old daughter. So
Oh, that's
when
good
I
age.
go travel, across the country, she's at home taking care of the homestead. So I can't thank her enough. She's when I first got into drifting too, like this was before we had a child. She would come with me to drift events, and it was awesome. She loved it. And it's funny too, because I thought I was gonna scare the shit out of her in my drift car, and she like stone faced, like she was smiling, but she wasn't, screaming or like, "Oh my god, you're going so fast." And then it's funny the story about my daughter. Uh, we brought my daughter to a drift event when she was like 6 months old, and it's funny. She only came for like a half hour. My old lady just wanted to bring her, just to say hi and that. And at the time, she was having trouble sleeping at night. Like she would, scream all night long. Dude, we get her to drift track, and we got the big earmuffs on her and that, and it was like 2 minutes she was falling asleep. Just the sound of the
The
drift
rumble
cars
of
and
the
the
car,
tires just lulled her to sleep, and I was like, yeah,
yeah.
that's my kid, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, that's actually kind of like my whole extended family doesn't live local to me anymore. They're kind of spread out across the country. So it's pretty much just my tight knit family, but all supportive. And more so than family. I know a lot of people have great family, and I'm not putting any of them down. But for me, it's more so like my friends.
Well,
The
family doesn't have to be blood,
no,
right?
100%. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
you know, there's guys. You know what? I'm gonna talk shit right now. There's guys that go to the bar every weekend that have their clique at the bar. I don't care. I'll take my drift buddies any day of the week. You could put me in any situation. I'm stuck in China. with no food. If I call, as long as I got cell service and I could call one of my drift friends, I know I'm good.
yeah.
And that's that camaraderie we were talking about earlier. That's huge in drifting. But yeah, no, like I said, I can't thank uh, you know my family enough for how supportive they are of this. And it is. I'm in the first steps of the pro career. I'm not making money. I'm not quitting my job. I still work full time, but the goal is there.
Yep.
And so the support is huge. Because I'm I
Celebrate
put
the
off.
highs and hold you through the
I
lows
was gonna,
there.
I was gonna, I gotta get this on the tables just so the old lady's happy to hear this. But I put off like house projects, to put money in the drift car,
Yeah.
so I apologize for that, but you know, we got a bathroom down in our downstairs that's torn apart now, but I'm out in the garage welding radiators together and building motors. So
Yeah.
that kind of support is great to have.
No, that's huge. I mean that's what it takes to do that end of it, right? I mean, if you want to go if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, you got to have somebody with you, and
Oh
it's a
yeah,
long journey to get to the pro end of things, and you got to have that support and got to have that backing behind you, and it sounds like you do.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
cool. Okay, well, I got a couple other questions for you, and then we're
yeah. Shoot.
somehow we're coming up on an hour and a half. It doesn't seem like it's been that long, so
Well, I told you at the beginning, man. I
oh
could
yeah.
talk for another 2 hours if you wanted to. If you want to be like Joe Rogan, get into some pyramid conspiracies,
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
I got all that stuff too. Nah,
the
kidding.
aliens, man.
Yeah, yeah. But what do you got for me?
So, drifting aside, what is your ultimate car? If money was no object and you could
Ooh,
have whatever you
ooh.
wanted to drive, what would it be?
Oh man, that is only one option, or can I have two?
Well, you can have a couple in there. I've got a couple myself, so
Okay, so my let's put it this way, my daily, right? Going driving to work, driving around town, it's not going to be as flashy as most people think, but literally like a 2004 BMW M, the one with the V10.
oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, that's maybe 2006 coupe. But yeah, that's literally like I love the look of that car. The one series. One day I would like to drift one of those chassis. They're just a little pricey right now. But that would be my daily. And then I'm the type of guy where like, I don't really care about to impress people. So my next option, right, is going to be the full blown track car,
Yeah.
which man, I'm a rotary head at heart. Like I that was like one of the first things like that got me into cars was like the engineering behind the rotary engine. I know like they're kind of lame and they don't work the greatest, but I think
The sound they
dream
make is just hmm.
well yeah, so dream car would be E36 BMW with a four rotor like NA, just scream machine, rev it out to like 10K RPM and just screaming. Uh That would probably, you know, if you want to like the lame answer, like an exotic car, probably like a Lamborghini Countach. That's one I always liked as a kid.
Yeah,
Like
everybody
before I
had
was.
that poster on their
Yeah,
wall,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
from the school book fair.
yeah, yeah. Well, I think that was like a F40 or something like that.
So, yeah, yeah.
But but the Countach, I did have a poster, and I think it was like more like what the heck was the movie? I'm not good with movies, but Scarface. I think it was
Oh,
like I
oh,
had like
yeah,
one
yeah,
of
yeah.
those posters because they had. I think they had like a Countach in that movie. But yeah, that would I'm. Other than that, man, like I don't know. I mean, there's so many different things I would want.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're all car guys. I'm a car guy now, so it's like I look at everything. I would say the one thing I like over anything uh, is high revving engines. That's kind of like, you know, like you could take turbo noises or loud V8s, whatever, but like high revving engines just do it for me.
And
They
I
ma-
see. I like the sound of a cam, just a lumpy fucking woof, 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 like
yeah, 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 yeah,
just
yeah.
thumping away. The V8 just growling. That's what does it for me. Like you throw in an old like 65 Mustang or an old GTO or something like that. Just that sound right there. I'm a little bit older than you, and that's what we did back then. You
Oh
know, you,
yeah, oh yeah,
yeah, you flip the top hat over on your air cleaner and
yeah, yeah, yeah,
let her
yeah,
burn
yeah.
from there.
I'm not that old, but I hear of the days when well, what's the joke? If you have a flathead and a 10 mil wrench, you could tune your car.
Yeah, yeah,
Back in the carbureted days. But yeah, yeah, I like. I don't know. I mean, those would be some of my picks. I mean, one of the I actually owned one, but an old Toyota Corolla. The AE80 sticks. It's
oh
like
yeah,
the
the
drift.
original drift car.
Yeah, yeah. I had one. I had one, and it's funny. I took it to like two drift events and hated it. And at the time, I sold it and bought three BMWs for what I got for that car because
Oh
they
wow.
they hold their value for whatever reason. And then COVID happened, and that car I sold it for like $3,500, and then like a year later during COVID, that's my car, the one I sold, the dude sold it for $18,000, and I was like, man, I'm
Holy
an idiot for
shit.
selling that thing because now I'll never be able to get another one unless like I get like a complete like rust bucket and like totally rebuild it
Yeah,
from the bottom up.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, no, that's it'd be cool to drive a Formula One car too. I mean,
That would be something else right there. Yeah, squeeze into one of them and just see what the hell it actually feels like. Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
The
for sure.
screaming, get into an older one like with the
Oh yeah,
V10s or
yeah.
the
I
V12s,
was
and just
I was
screamers in
just
there.
gonna
Yeah,
say that. I
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, it's got to be the V8 one though. The
yeah.
ones that rev to like 18,000 RPMs.
Somehow without blowing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, one last question for you. Once you got into cars, or even today, who would be your hero? Who's the guy that you're chasing, and why would that be the guy to
Oh man,
drive?
it's so funny, but I like I don't know if I should admit this because like I rub shoulders with this guy now. I mean, not on the same level. He's in Pro One and I'm in Pro Spec, but definitely has to be he's a Formula Drift driver, James Dean. I don't know if you heard
Okay.
of him.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a three-time champion, and he shreds. And yeah, I do. He started out like me. I feel like they from Ireland, and they were driving cars and the grassy, the old fields, and that was back when I first started getting into cars. My all the farmland near me, my buddy's farm. We literally, I had like an old Subaru Legacy, and we would just like beat the piss out of it, ripping through the, we had just cut the corn down, so there's like 10-inch stalks in the field, and we're just ripping old Subarus through the fields, and yeah, that's kind of how like James Dean started too. I wasn't there with him, but that's like the story that you
Yep.
hear. So I kind of like that. I actually I have a little dirt oval track in my backyard. Actually, I live on a little bit of property, and me and my buddies just over time we would just start, every once in a while, I'd like rip one little heater in the yard, and then over time it was like, oh yeah, let's all buy junk shit boxes and keep them at my house. Okay, cool, no problem. And next thing you know, we got like a dirt oval. We drift it. We're not like racing, but
Yeah.
so like that's still driving in the dirt, in a field kind of just rings true with me. And that guy's like a 3-time champion now. So one day I'd like to kind of be on that same level. I totally like fangirled out when I was in when I was in New Jersey for Formula Drift. It was like, there's they call it like the setup day, uh, where it's before any fans are allowed in. It's all just people, drivers and crew. And you can go out and walk the track. So like I'm out walking the track, and I kind of like sit down on one of the like concrete barriers, and like I'm just like kind of zoning out, just kind of taking everything in. And this big tall lanky guy starts walking up to me, and he just looks at me and he goes, "How you doing? You ready to drive?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, man. Like, how about you?" And it was James Dean, and he probably doesn't remember this, but like to me, that was like, he saw
That's
he saw me as a driver, so it was like, cool, all right,
yeah.
Um, so yeah, yeah, that was pretty cool. Maybe next year I'll like kind of talk to him some more, and
Yeah.
maybe let him know he's a driving factor between my motivation, and yeah, see what happens.
Fuck, that's pretty cool. Like, yeah, you got somebody to chase there too, right? Someone to aspire towards, and say you got the kind of the same backstory and coming up through the ranks and work your way through it. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, no, that's
yep.
super cool.
There's a there's like a reel on Instagram of this guy James Dean, and it's literally like it's two videos of him, and it was like it's one video of him like drifting in this old BMW in a field, and it's like, the caption is, it's like, just some Irish guy drifting in a field, and then it like cuts to him in his pro car, and it's like now a 3-time world champion, and like that video to me is literally like, it's gonna sound so nerdy, but like I watch that video every time before I go out like on the track as like my motivation.
It gets the
So
adrenaline going, and yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah, fuck, yeah, that's super cool. Cool.
yeah. So that's kind of my story, really. Um, I don't know if you have anything else, or
No, that's pretty much it. That's what I wanted to do is just chat with you and hear your story and who you are, where you came from, where you're headed towards, and
yeah, yeah. Have you?
yeah,
I got a question for you again. Another
yeah.
question for you. Uh, have you heard of FabMac Industries?
No,
Oh man, gotta check them out. Canadian based shop, man. They do engines, all sorts of stuff. I met those guys during my Pro Am series. They're in Ontario, I want to say. What's
probably,
the?
yeah, yeah.
I'm so bad at geography, so I apologize. What's like the closest to like Buffalo, New York?
Yeah,
Would that
yeah, that'd
be
be Ontario.
Ontario?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's where they're from. I Saskatchewan. That's more west,
that's
right?
over between
It's more
Dakotas
east.
and Montana.
Okay,
Comes
so
right up
it is
between them
more
two.
west. Okay, yeah,
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 yeah. Right on. Man, I,
yeah,
I have a lot of questions for you, but it
yeah.
doesn't pertain
Fire,
to car stuff. No, I
blast
literally.
away. Yeah.
Oh god, this is gonna be embarrassing, but So one of my pastimes too is I love going on Google Earth and literally just like looking at things.
Yeah.
So what's the deal in northern Canada? There's like this whole area, right, where it's like it literally just looks like dots of water, like little lakes everywhere. Now I
Yeah.
assume in real life that's like covered with ice most of the time. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, like
like
we get summers. Like you
but
get
I'm
up.
talking like way north.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like they'll defrost up there, and then like in the summertime. So, oh, when were we up there? Kind of the middle of June to the middle of August, somewhere in there. Like they'll have 24-hour daylight. You get up above the Arctic Circle, and then
Right,
and
right, right.
sun never sets, right? And their summers, yeah, they'll have summers up there just the same as everybody else, but it never, it warms up and like
Right,
t-shirt,
right, right.
not like 35, 40 degrees, but yeah, the snow's gone and you get down into the basically the our Canadian Shield like is just rock and some greenery that's there, and that's about it. But yeah,
Huh.
the lake, there's lots of lakes up there, and it's just like divots in the rock, and there's lakes.
Oh, okay. Is that yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I guess from all the, you know, thawing and freezing probably tears the land up.
yeah.
I don't know. I just I always wondered about that. Like what's up with northern Canada? Like, I'm not trying to be rude or anything. You know what
No,
I mean?
hey, if you don't know,
But
you don't know. Yeah.
I'm a curious person, and I know I found one thing. It was like it was actually like an inlet that like the French would sail in to Canada from there. And I don't know. I'm rambling on, but
In the Hudson's Bay,
that might
in
have been what
there.
it was. I'd
Yeah.
have to look at my phone. I don't want to be rude while
Oh.
we're talking, but yeah, yeah. I'll catch up with you yeah after this. Maybe
Oh, for
ask you
sure.
some
Yeah.
more questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah. I've never actually been to Canada, so
Oh, really?
I've been to Niagara Falls on the U.S. side,
Yeah.
and I will say, like, we were there. It was cold. It was raining. There was like 6 people on the U.S. side, and it was like all quiet. And they were partying over on the Canadian side. I remember we were like, man, if we had our passports, it looks like a good time over there.
Canucks up there, yeah.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. That's all I got. Sorry for the annoying question.
Oh, hey. No, that's why we're here, man. It's
Yeah,
got
yeah.
anything else, ask away.
No, I mean,
No?
that's I would say if anything, thanks, man. I mean, it's been a pleasure, and
Yeah.
I'd love to
Likewise.
do something like this again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I apologize if I rambled on too
No,
much.
not at all. Not at all. That's
I told you, I love talking. So
yeah.
I could go on for hours. But
No, I mean if you're up for it, we'll catch up either midsummer or something like that, see how your season's going and
yeah, 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 for sure.
how things are happening down there.
I would like to. I know. I think last year they did the. Once again, this was. I think it was more towards Ontario, but they did the Adam LZ did the world tour, and they're up in
Okay.
Canada. I think I want to see if I can hit that event this year. Just like I said, one of my buddies, Andrew Shorkey, he's from Canada, and he wound up getting his pro license, but actually chose not to do it, just
Oh,
because it is a big undertaking. There's a lot of stress involved, and I guess he just wanted to have fun drifting and do
yeah.
smaller cash events, if you will. But I would like to drive with him again. Getting up to Canada might be a good way to do it.
Yeah. Well, they've got a pretty good group out here. It's called Spec D is who they race, like the name of the organizer
Yeah,
made
okay,
the
yeah,
event.
I've heard of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Seen some
And
videos.
they'll run here, so in Edmonton and then Fort Saskatchewan, which are about 45 minutes apart, and then in is it Mission, BC? I think is the third place that they drift at. And there's a few guys will come up. Oh, I can't remember what the guy's name, but he runs a like a New Edge Mustang. Um, not Adam drifts. Doesn't matter anyway. but there's one guy that's come up and he's run with them boys a few times, and there's some pretty good, pretty talented guys that run in that group, and then like I say, there's a bunch of guys just like me that are just backwoods, throw the car on the trailer and drag it out
That's
there and let it rip. So
that's
go
the
and play.
beauty of it, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because that's like even our local track now that I go to, like I went there first, fell in love with it, and like now I even help out. Like I'm a staff member. I help
Oh,
run
cool.
grid, and it's like any weekend there. It's like same thing. You'll have the guy that drives his Miata with like four extra tires in his trunk. You'll
Yep.
have like me, a pro driver there. You'll have the guy with a huge budget that just builds crazy cars, all at the same place.
Yep.
All either driving together or hanging out. And it's actually if you ever get the chance, you should come check out a Drift Evergreen event in PA. I don't know how far the drive would be, but
Well, it would be far enough. I'd fly in and just drive out there for sure.
the parties we have, that's like what we're known for is like every one of our events it's always a 2-day event.
Yeah.
So it's like you drive till 10 p.m., shut everything down, and then it's like, man, I mean they have a flamingo, like one of those yard ornament flamingos that they
Yeah.
like cut the tail off of, and like everybody chugs beer out of it, and like
Drink from the shoe, but no, it's the flamingo,
you,
right? Yeah.
they call it a flabongo.
Oh.
but yeah, I mean, and then we have like nighttime pit bike races, and it's a blast.
Oh, that sounds
We
like a
we
riot.
do one event every year. It's called the Pumpkin Smash, and so our track there's two tracks. There's one that's like kind of like a little pit. It's like a pit lane almost, and it's basically like three turns, like almost like a parking lot. And
Yep.
that's like our beginner track. And then we have a oval track with the paving on the infield, and
Oh, cool.
like a little road course on the infield. But every Halloween we line the bank with pumpkins, and it's literally like whoever smashes the most pumpkins win. And
Hang it out there.
I won the first one in 2018. So I was the pumpkin smashing king, and it literally has evolved into who wants to write off their car, and that's pretty much it. But there's a lot of good carnage that comes from that. You know, the guy that won it this year flipped his car, which was the first time we had a car flip at the track, but he literally just drove straight into the wall on
Oh,
purpose.
wow. There you go. Yeah.
But I've never flipped a car, so knock on wood. I don't know.
I've been in a couple that have been upside down. Not racing, but out screwing around and into the ditch and upside down. And thankfully we weren't
Yeah,
going too fast. Nobody got hurt. But yeah, it was spooky enough. That's
yeah.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
never experienced that yet. No,
Yeah.
I say yet. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Or if it does, at least it's hopefully I'd be in my track car.
Yeah.
Because
Strapped in and safe. Yeah.
oh yeah, we run all the bells and whistles, 5-point harness, Hans device, the roll cage. It's amazing after you drive in a real like a full blown race car, and then it's like I get in my like daily. I drive a Volvo too, which is like a tank, but
Yeah.
it's like I feel so unsafe in that. I'm like, wait, this seatbelt. I'm clicked in, but I could still pull it in and out. Like, what the
Exactly.
heck?
Yeah.
But yeah, 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 yeah. That's I don't know, man. That's all I got for now.
That's okay. Well, we'll save the anything else pops up, we'll save it for the next time.
Right on.
And thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thanks for
And
having me, man.
oh yeah, yeah,
It's been a
100%.
blast.
Yeah.
Yep.
Excellent. All right. Okay, everybody, that is Danmo out of not Pennsylvania.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yeah,
got it.
Pennsylvania. Yeah.
It's called Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Downtown Pennsylvania. All right. Um, until next time, man. Take care, and we'll see you around the track.
Right on. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too. Thanks. All right. Bye bye.
Take care.